MTV's early 2000s show Pimp My Ride is still fresh for many people because of the exuberant displays of stylish cars. But what really happened behind all those flashy vehicles? We'll take a closer look at the truth behind MTV's Pimp My Ride. In theory, the show sounded like every college kid's dream. Wouldn't it be amazing if a famous rapper could show up at your door and take your awful car away from you and turn it into the coolest car on the block? For a lot of people, it resonated, and the show gained a lot of popularity, getting 6 seasons in total. But after some time had passed and the show had become a distant memory for most people, a few of the contestants came out to reveal some problematic stories about their time on the show. HuffPost picked up on the story and interviewed some of the contestants who made appearances on the show. Justin Deeringer posted a Reddit AMA about some experiences he had with the show, falsifying information or straight up lying about what happened on set. He told people that the show took his car away for 5 months before eventually returning him the pimped out version. During that time, he wasn't even given a substitute for his ride. Instead, like other contestants, he was supposed to find a mode of transportation out of his pocket. Justin had a champagne machine and a tiny theater system installed inside of his car, but according to him, it was taken out right after filming ended. When a producer was asked about it, they said that they had to remove those items for safety purposes. Pimp My Ride was all about how over the top you could potentially make a car. Some of the gimmicks worked, but most of the additions just did not work, and hence had to be removed once the show was over. But the show just wasn't an extravagant display of flashy cars. It also had many storylines within each episode. Seth Martino was another contestant interviewed by HuffPost who had complaints. For starters, the show's producers insisted on making the episode about Seth's weight. The show didn't waste any chances to bring it up and even told Seth to drop candy bars inside of his car because they wanted to show him as a person who liked eating candy while he drove. So naturally, they fitted a cotton candy making machine inside the trunk of his car. But this was the biggest problem with the show. The writers and producers probably came up with these ideas and tried to find contestants to mold those ideas into the contestants' realities. The screens fitted inside the car never worked once the filming was done, and the LED lights that were installed would overheat if left on for too long, so they had to be taken out as well. Another example of this kind of thing happened with a contestant called Brooke. The 25-year-old contestant was told to say that she was 22 on camera and that she was a movie buff. These pieces of information were written out for Brooke only because the show had a movie-themed car in mind, and that's what they wanted to show. As for the age was concerned, a majority of the people who were watching were college students who were on the cusp of adulthood, and they wanted to see people like themselves on the show. It may not come as a surprise at this point to know that almost all of the reactions on the show were fake too. Many of the contestants already knew they were going to be on the show before rapper Xzibit came to their homes. Oh, and many of the houses shown in the show were fake too. Some of these issues don't exactly dig at the show because this is the reality behind reality television. Much of it, if not all, is an illusion. Something that did bother the contestants was the state of the cars when they eventually got them back. Jack Glazier was another contestant who found his car in a dire mechanical state after the shooting was done. It was so bad that he had to go and sell his car just after a month. His car didn't even have a muffler when he got it back, according to him. Seth recalls the drive back home from set being a catastrophe, as his car seemed more like a sinking boat than an actual car. He had to save up his own money and get a new engine installed a couple of months later, because that's how bad of a state his vehicle was in. One of the producers, Larry Hochberg, was asked about this, but he said that it was unfair to say that the show completely glossed over the mechanical side. He recalled many people on set going out of their way to find parts that fit certain cars, and also added that the show wasn't about making these cars functional, but about pimping them to the max. Many of the cars were already in dire circumstances, so it would have been way too costly to fix up these rides. But sometimes, people on the show purposely tried to make these cars look as broken down as possible because that fit in with the premise of the show. Jake's car was put through an aircraft paint remover to make it seem like his bumper was falling off. It's a bit extreme, but that's just how far the show was willing to go. Even when the contestants got their pimped out cars, they were expected to react in crazy ways, which often took multiple takes before the show's producers were satisfied. Upon receiving his car, Jake's reaction wasn't what the producer wanted. So after many retakes and some coercion by a big guy named Big Dane, Jake finally gave out the reaction they needed. The show even went as far as putting cigarette butts inside of Jake's car because the storyline said that his grandmother was a chain smoker, so hence the mess in the back seat. Many of these contestants were getting time on air and a lot of popularity at the time, so many of them just went along with what the show wanted to do. Jake's storyline painted him as a loner who couldn't get any girls because of the car he drove, even though in reality he had a girlfriend. The show asks Jake to either not mention her at all or break up with her. Up until now, you might think that the show was run by a bunch of greedy producers who were coercing their contestants into giving out statements that were far from the truth. But according to the same people, the show wasn't all that bad of an experience. Even though Jake was a little shaken up, he eventually sold the car he bought for $500 for a whopping $18,000. Justin put a lot more in his car and even joined a car club. He talked about his time on the show and told the HuffPost that he used to be a really shy kid before he went on the show. Afterward, he said that it gave him a lot of confidence in himself and with the ladies. He even had a great time working with and meeting with the host, Xzibit. The final interviewee, Seth, had mixed opinions about the show, but even he didn't deny the fact that overall, the show was a great experience and a fun story for him to tell his friends. There were times when he regretted being on the show, but he's quite okay with his time on the show now. He even told reporters that if he could do it all over again, he would take the chance any day of the week. After these interviews came out, a lot of the heat went towards Xzibit because he was the face of the show. In an interview, he talked about his time there and said that he had no idea what the mechanics were doing to the cars there. In fact, even when he signed on for the show, all he wanted was for his songs to play on MTV, which they did. But with that, the show itself got so much attention that the host wasn't prepared for that. Even in the show, Xzibit only appears at the start and end of each episode, so he didn't have any say in what was happening to these cars. Overall, however, he was a really fun presence on set. According to Larry Hochberg, Xzibit has a talent as a host and a rapper, which is why he resonated with so many people who watched that show. A lot of the contestants themselves had a great time filming with the rapper. According to Jake, Xzibit once told him that he was going down to hell over the weekend to kill the devil so he could make Satan skin boots. Now that's what you call a natural host. Even if many of the things that we saw on the show weren't exactly real, the show itself had a lot of fun moments, and people at the time really loved this kind of content. A lot of people still have many fond memories of watching the show on MTV. It would be interesting to take a peek behind some other famous reality shows to find out how much of it was actually real.